Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Rhythms of the Culture. Our special guest this evening is none other than CEDRIC PHILLIP. He's the General Manager of Campbell's. He's also the Director of the River Song Chorale. We'll be back in a moment to talk to CEDRIC PHILLIP. Back in a moment. The first edition of Rhythms of the Culture. In this very new television program, we'll be highlighting various expressions and aspects of Dominica's culture. Tassia, let's start off with you giving us a bit of your background for persons who don't really know you like that well. Where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school. So, Ophelia, you've performed in just so many places all over. What are some of the performances that stand out in your mind as probably the more memorable?
Now, Alwyn, you traveled with the People's Action Theatre through the Caribbean. You mentioned a couple of islands and Caribbean countries that you traveled to.
Welcome back to Rhythms of the Culture. My guest on this program is CEDRIC PHILLIP. CEDRIC is the director of the River Song Chorale, but he's also general manager of Campbell. So, CEDRIC, that's a huge position you're holding there.
Yes, it is, and there's some very big shoes to fill.
And I know your late brother Carol also shared that responsibility as well.
Yes, that is correct.
But now you have full responsibility.
Oh, yes, yes.
How would you describe managing Campbell's?
Managing Campbell's, the efforts to actually make or to bring up the employees so that they are actually able to, they're actually empowered and skilled enough to actually do certain things on their own, has paid off dividends. Mm-hmm. So we thank God every day. We value our employees very much. Mm-hmm. And that helps us with the day-to-day management of the company. And essentially, you know, we meet with the supervisors regularly, and information is shared both up and down. So at any one time, we know what's going on with the company.
Yes.
At all times.
So, and about how long Campbell's has been in existence now, roughly?
I joined the company in 1988, well, 1987 actually, and Campbell's Variety, if you remember that,
Campbell's Variety
goes back to a grocery store my father opened on Church Street in the 1950s.
Okay. So that comes from a long line.
So it's yes, it comes from a long line.
Yes. And of course, you come from a very talented and musical family. You know, you have brothers and sisters involved in music, especially. And in your case, you have grown into a very talented musician yourself. You play in church. You're the director of the River Song Chorale. But how did it start off for you as a young boy? How did you get interested in music? Who sort of encouraged you in the beginning?
Well, the first thing is that my father and my mother had 11 children. And I grew up in a household where there was constant activity and lots of noise. You know,
and lots of music, maybe.
We had a piano, and you could go on the piano at any time and play. There was a gramophone where we listened to music, and in those days, there was the local music, like Swinging Stars, played at my house as a child several times. We grew up at the old house where Sutton Place Hotel is now, and that was sort of like a grand stage for carnival, right? So we were actually on the carnival route. So, from an early age, the culture of Dominica was well ingrained in us. The revelers and so on would often make our house a stop to either rest or to get something to eat or drink and then go out again. And I was always in the window of that old house upstairs looking at what was going on downstairs. And then my father had a collection of classical music records and so on that we would play. So I was very much acquainted with the classics. And then DBS Radio, there was a children's program which we would always listen to on when it came on a Sunday afternoon, which also played in those days classical or semi-classical music from Broadway and all those kinds of things. So, the musical experience was extremely varied in that household. My sister, of course, married Norman later, the band leader of Swinging Stars. My brother Carol was involved in the band. My brother Steve played the saxophone and was involved with Swinging Stars and a few other bands. And also in the attic of the house, my older brothers had built a drum set made out of old biscuit and butter tins with plastic stretched over them and rubber bands, and they would meet upstairs with their friends and play music. Play, either use their mouths to make sounds of trumpets and so on, and somebody play the bottles. And so there was a lot of music in our household, but I imagine there was a lot of music in perhaps a lot of the other households as well. And
of course you have two other brothers, Irvin and Cornell too, who...
Yeah, and we all grew up in the same environment.
Grew up in the whole...
And eventually, as people got older, my brother went off to do dance and he came back. WCK was formed in our household. By then we were living on Bath Road, and then we started getting involved in choir, Mama Joseph and so on. Hearing them sing for Swinging Stars 20th anniversary at the time, and sitting there in the old Later house and listening to them rehearse, and seeing Mama and Pearl Christian and all of these stalwarts, Jennifer Wallace and so on, singing these sort of hymns, that we consider as Caribbean hymns now. In those days, that was kind of like novel. And hearing Swinging Stars, the dance band, accompany them, that did have an effect on me.
Inspiring. And of course, you started to play in church, CEDRIC. How long now? You've been playing organ, piano?
Okay,
quite
I
a while.
actually started playing in church exactly in the first week of 1990, of January 1990. I had been encouraged to come to play, but it was never a thing for me. At the time, I was taking lessons from Mrs. Leng Sorrento and so on in piano and that sort of thing. And eventually, with the encouragement of my mother, and then Monsignor John Lewis had taken over in the cathedral, and he came to my house and asked, would I be willing to do it? Also, there was another priest, Father Elvio Augustine from Portsmouth, who had really, sort of railroaded me into, being a musician with the junior choir at the cathedral at the time. And Cornell, my younger brother of the WCK fame, would come in every now and then to help out and to play for the bigger occasions. When he appeared, I sort of took a back seat to that. And but no, that's when that began.
Okay.
That's when that began. So I'd say from 1990. Before that, I would play occasionally. There was the principal organist at the cathedral, Ms. Nancy Folkerts from the United States. And she encouraged me, and she gave me opportunities to play the organ and so on. And it's an instrument I eventually got to like very much, and actually composed music for eventually.
Okay, so we are talking to Cedric Phillip, who is the director of the River Song Chorale. We're going to take a short break and come back to continue our conversation with Cedric. Back in a moment. The first edition of Rhythms of the Culture. In this very new television program, we'll be highlighting various expressions and aspects of Dominica's culture. Tassia, let's start off with you giving us a bit of your background for persons who don't really know you like that well. Where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school. So, Ophelia, you've performed in just so many places all over. What are some of the performances that stand out in your mind as probably the more memorable?
Now, all when you traveled with the People's Action Theatre through the Caribbean, you mentioned a couple of islands and Caribbean countries that you traveled to.
Welcome back to Rhythms of the Culture. We're talking to Cedric Phillip. And Cedric, a while ago you spoke about your involvement in church as a musician, but then also you went on to form the River Song Chorale. Tell us how that group was founded.
Well, before I got an opportunity to go to study in 1994, I had the idea of forming a choir outside of church, just to do a lot of the music, the secular music, the pop music that I was interested in. And I was able to form one, and it got the name Sequel from a gentleman by the name of Lindsay George. So that lasted for a couple months, and we actually ended up composing music in that group. And then I left to study, and then I came back, and the idea came again to form a choir, but it was not because of me. There was somebody getting married at the Soufriere Church, and I said to them, is it possible that I could choose my own choir? It's not going to be a standing choir, I'm going to choose individuals. It's going to be a small group. And they said, okay, go ahead. So I chose a group of, I think it was 4 gentlemen and 2 ladies. And I got them together, and it was a marvelous experience, just rehearsing and the type of music that we rehearsed and the execution at the wedding ceremony itself. And then after that, the group said, well, why don't we stay together? And that is how it was formed. We got a name about 3 months afterwards. We were looking for a name, and I said River Song. And someone said, but why? And I said, because the vision that I have for the group is that like a river which takes its water from all the rivulets and the little streams all along the pathway to finally reach where it's big and broad and deep, having the contribution from all of these, branches, that I would like a group to be able to relate to be able to execute several different types of music. But music which really speaks to the soul, music which really had a depth to them.
So how would you describe the types of music that River Song performs?
River Song performs all types of music. The only thing that I ask for in the music is that it be authentic, that there is a certain amount of authenticity and depth to it, that it must touch us in different parts. It's not just done at a superficial level, but it's actually done with the composer's intent, if there is an intent. So we've done all sorts of things, from chant to madrigals to the standard classical stuff. We forayed into South American choral music. We've done Negro spirituals. We've done African choral music. I even put them on notice because a few years ago I got a selection in a book on folk songs from China. But the thing is, it's the interest that it brings. It's the to be able to experience a culture through the music of that culture. It's a very powerful experience to be able to go out and actually research a piece of music and to do it in the language that it was written in, to do the research on what does it mean, you know, and to be able to impart that to the choristers and actually have them take that as their own and execute it.
It's certainly an achievement.
it's-
And I know that you have been having
quite-
annual concerts. What has been the response and the feedback from the general public to your concerts?
The circle has been small, and we were not very consistent in terms of putting one on every year, because the group of people that I fortunately or unfortunately were able to attract to the choir are some of the busiest people in the whole of Dominica. A lot of them hold extremely responsible positions, you know, different areas, and very diverse group of people. Very diverse group of people.
So how large is the group now?
The group varies between 15 and 22 members. It's always been within that range. When we started off, we had about 50% of the singers below age 25. Some of them really were teenagers, really. And a few of them have actually grown up into the group. They're 30-something years old now and so on. And we've been able to retain a lot of the members over the years. And yeah, that's the size of the group.
And I know that you have also performed, especially in Guadeloupe. Tell us a little bit about those performances.
Our performances in Guadeloupe have been well received. And as an aside, I suppose it's probably because we've rehearsed them well in Dominica with our audience. But they've been well received. And
Where in Guadeloupe, by the way, do you perform? Mainly?
we've performed in all kinds of different locations.
Oh, okay.
All sorts of different locations. Mostly in, the concert venues in Guadeloupe for choral music seems mostly in churches. So we've done a lot of that. We've also hosted the various groups who hosted us in Guadeloupe. We've hosted them here in Dominica.
And I guess to maintain, you spoke about some of the members being very, very busy. To maintain that kind of membership is a bit of a challenge to you sometimes, eh?
It can be a bit of a challenge, but then we have the technology in terms of I can deliver things electronically. I can record this stuff in the privacy and comfort of my house when everybody's sleeping at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And where and how often does the group rehearse?
The group rehearses usually once a week. So the material is given out by email or WhatsApp or whatever, or posted on the group's page in Facebook. And then they go off and rehearse on their own and then put everything together.
And where do you rehearse?
We usually meet at SMA. That's been our home for several years now. Thanks to the late Mr. Elwin, who was a stalwart member of the choir for many, many, many years. We've met at my mother's house for a long time at the beginning, and we've met at the convent high school. Yeah. And,
so any other aspirations, hopes, activities you'd like to see, goals you'd like to see the group achieve?
Boy, the thing is, you can live 100 lifetimes and you will never sing all the music there is in the world to sing. And actually finding interesting music, that suits the resources that you have, and it's always about a piece that I really want to do, or a piece that a member brings to me that I really wants to do, and I appreciate it a lot when members come with suggestions for pieces. Sometimes they're pieces that I know and I think are sort of beyond the pale of the group because they call for so much, and we attempt them, and at times we're pretty successful at doing them, really and truly. And then there are songs that they bring to me that I never knew, before. For example, one member about 3 years ago basically introduced me to John Rutter's, a piece in John Rutter's repertoire called Et Misericordia. And the choir is so in love with that piece of music. We're rehearsing it right now, and we're hoping that we can do it this Christmas.
When did you, this Christmas, I was just about to ask you, when would be your next
yeah, we're
production
planning to do something at Christmas.
Okay.
We're planning to do
Christmas
something
music, will it be? Or?
It'll be Christmas music.
Okay.
It'll be Christmas music and roped into some other stuff that we've done in the past that is pretty successful. But yeah, it will be mostly Christmas music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking to CEDRIC PHILLIP. He is the director of the River Song Chorale. He's also the general manager of Campbell's Business Machines. We'll be back in a moment for the conclusion of this program with CEDRIC PHILLIP. The first edition of Rhythms of the Culture. In this very new television program, we'll be highlighting various expressions and aspects of Dominica's culture. Tassia, let's start off with you giving us a bit of your background for persons who don't really know you like that well. Where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school. So, Ophelia, you've performed in just so many places all over. What are some of the performances that stand out in your mind as probably the more memorable?
Now, Owen, you traveled with the People's Action Theatre through the Caribbean. You mentioned a couple of islands and Caribbean countries that you traveled to.
The first edition of Rhythms of the Culture in this very new television program. So welcome back to Rhythms of the Culture. Cedric, you are juggling between Campbell's, between River Song, church, you have a family as well.
Yeah.
People must be wondering, how does he do it?
In a number of ways, it all somehow gets...
It sort of works out.
It's all somehow works out. I can't give you a formula, I can't tell you that, but it all works out. I mean, in terms of the family, it's what I do and it's what my children do, and we have a sort of a musical household, you know, at home. So it feeds off of that. It's a little harder at work, but then, you know, when I always tell people, the music is my after-work job.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and it's
my after-work job.
Form of inspiration, you know.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. So it sort of forms that sort of other side. The other side. I mean, business having been raised in basically a merchant's household, and having a family history that is involved in commercial activity. It's sort of in your blood. You just grow up and you pick up these things because they're all around you. You know?
And then generally, Cedric, when you listen to the music in Dominica, when you look at musical development in Dominica, how do you feel about it? Do you think, you know, we could improve in a number of ways, still a lot of room
I
for
think there are lots of
development?
things we do that is extremely good. I think there's a lot of things we do that is extremely, extremely good. What I fear for sometimes is that we're getting less and less honesty into the music that we do. That I'm fearful sometimes that we try to just be sort of copycat of something and then it doesn't come out right. All I ask of my singers and all I ask of anybody that I work with is to dig deep, because music touches the deepest part of a human soul. and to dig deep and bring up whatever is in there into your music. Make your music authentic. No matter what it is, make it authentic. And I think, you know, the musical heritage that we're so proud of, I think it's a real thing. And if we can do that, the future will be bright for our music. Yeah.
Well, certainly you have been playing your role, Cedric, in promoting and developing music in Dominica, and let me congratulate you on
Thank
your
you.
contribution, and to also congratulate the River Song Chorale for the work that you've been doing with choral music as well in Dominica. So this brings us to the end of the Rhythms of the Culture program. My guest has been Cedric PHILLIP. Hope that you enjoyed the program. And inviting you to join us again next time for another edition of Rhythms of the Culture. I am your host, Raymond Lawrence, and I thank you for watching.